I was sitting in the back corner of the most expensive restaurant in Manhattan, watching my parents toast my younger brother's brilliance, when my entire world shattered and rebuilt itself in the span of 60 seconds. My father stood up, champagne glass raised high, and announced that Dylan would inherit our family's $50 million company, receive a brand new Tesla, and move into our $10 million mansion on the Upper East Side. My mother looked directly at me and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, that I was their little disappointment. I stood to leave, blinking back tears, when a woman in an elegant navy suit approached my table, handed me a thick manila envelope, leaned close to my ear, and whispered just loud enough for me to hear, "It's time to tell them who you really are." My hands trembled as I held that envelope, the paper crisp and expensive between my fingers. I didn't open it right away. Instead, I sat back down heavily in my chair, and everything from the past 28 years came flooding back like a dam had burst inside my brain. I grew up in Westchester County, in one of those sprawling houses with circular driveways and rooms we never used. My father, Richard, had founded a software security company back in 1996, right when the internet was exploding into everyone's lives. He'd made his fortune early, sold part of the company, then bought it back and grew it even bigger. My mother, Patricia, came from old Connecticut money, the kind of family that had portraits of ancestors in oil paint hanging in the hallway. She'd married my father because he was brilliant and ambitious, and together they built what they considered the perfect American success story. Then I came along and ruined their narrative. From the time I was about 8 years old, I knew something was different about me. I couldn't sit still in class. My mind would wander in the middle of math problems, floating away to imagine entire worlds and stories while the teacher wrote equations on the board. I'd start my homework with the best intentions, then find myself 3 hours later having reorganized my entire bookshelf by color instead of finishing a single worksheet. My backpack was always a disaster. I lost permission slips, forgot about tests, couldn't remember to bring home the right textbooks. My teachers suggested testing. They used words like attention deficit and recommended specialists. My mother looked at them like they'd suggested I had the plague. She told them, in her crisp, cold voice, that her daughter was simply lazy and needed to try harder. My father agreed. There would be no testing, no accommodations, no excuses. Then Dylan was born when I was 3, and everything got infinitely worse. Dylan was everything I wasn't. Focused, organized, naturally gifted at sitting still and absorbing information like some kind of academic sponge. By the time he was in kindergarten, he was reading chapter books. By 3rd grade, he was doing math 2 grades ahead. Teachers loved him. My parents glowed with pride every time they attended his parent-teacher conferences. Meanwhile, I was pulled out of class for reading support. I got B's and C's despite staying up until midnight trying to understand concepts that seemed to slip through my brain like water through a sieve. I wasn't stupid. I knew I wasn't. But every single adult in my life treated me like I was broken, defective, a disappointment. Dinner table conversations became torture sessions. My father would ask Dylan about his day, and Dylan would talk about winning the science fair or getting selected for the advanced math program. Then my father would turn to me with this expression, this mix of pity and frustration, and say something like, "And what about you, Krista? Any good news to share?" And I'd have to sit there, pushing food around my plate, mumbling about getting a B- on a quiz, watching the disappointment settle over his face like fog. My mother was worse. She'd sigh these long, theatrical sighs and say things like, "I just don't understand where we went wrong with you. Your brother has the same genes. He eats the same food. He goes to the same schools. Why can't you just be more like him?" High school was a nightmare. Dylan sailed through with a 4.2 grade point average, taking every AP class offered, captain of the debate team, treasurer of student government. I struggled to maintain a 3.0, spending hours in the library while my friends went to parties, trying desperately to prove I wasn't as dumb as everyone thought. When it came time for college applications, my parents paid for Dylan's SAT prep courses, the expensive kind, with private tutors who came to the house twice a week. When I asked if I could do the same program, my father actually laughed. He said it would be wasted money. that I should focus on state schools where the standards were lower. I could maybe get into a decent state university with my grades, he said, but nothing like where Dylan was headed. Dylan got into Harvard with a full academic scholarship. I got into Oregon State University. It was a good school, but my parents treated my acceptance letter like I'd been admitted to a community college. They didn't even put it on the refrigerator. My college graduation was on a Saturday in June. It was beautiful weather, sunny and warm. I'd worked so hard for that degree in graphic design, pulling all-nighters, pushing through my inability to focus, teaching myself tricks to manage my scattered brain. I'd invited my parents months in advance. They said they'd be there. The morning of graduation, my mother called. She said something had come up, a business trip that couldn't be rescheduled. I sat in the stadium in my cap and gown, watching other students' families cheer and take photos, and I had no one. The empty seats next to me felt like a physical weight on my chest. I found out 3 weeks later, through Dylan, who let it slip, that there had been no business trip. They'd gone to watch Dylan compete in a crew team race at Harvard. His team had placed third. They'd chosen his third-place finish over my graduation. That was when I decided to disappear. I looked down at the envelope in my hands, back in the restaurant, and carefully lifted the flap. Inside was a letter on thick, cream-colored stationery. The handwriting was elegant, feminine, unfamiliar. It began, "Dear Krista, I've waited 7 years to contact you. Your parents don't know what you've accomplished, but I do. It's time." The letter was signed by someone named Dr. Eleanor Finch. I looked up, confused, and the woman who'd handed me the envelope was still standing there. She was in her 30s, professional, with kind eyes behind stylish glasses. She smiled gently and said, "Dr. Finch said you'd need proof before you'd believe. Check your phone. The wire transfer just cleared." I fumbled for my phone in my purse, hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I opened my banking app, and my vision went blurry. There, in my checking account, was a deposit of $200,000. The memo line read, "Payment for services rendered, Mindflow Consulting, sender, Finch Capital Ventures." The restaurant suddenly felt too small, too loud, too bright. Everything was spinning, and I couldn't breathe right, and this stranger was still standing there looking at me with something that looked almost like pride. "What is this?" I whispered. "Who are you?" "I'm Dr. Finch's executive assistant," she said quietly. "My name is Jennifer, and Dr. Finch wanted you to have that before the real conversation begins." I excused myself from the table and nearly ran to the restaurant's bathroom. Jennifer followed at a respectful distance. Once inside the marble and gold bathroom that probably cost more than most people's cars, I locked myself in a stall and tried to remember how to breathe. $200,000, just sitting in my account, from someone I'd never heard of. Except that wasn't quite true. Now that the shock was wearing off, the name Eleanor Finch was tickling something in my memory. I pulled out my phone and searched for her. The results filled my screen immediately. Dr. Eleanor Finch, venture capitalist, founder and CEO of Finch Capital Ventures, one of the most successful investment firms in the Pacific Northwest. She'd made her fortune investing in tech startups in the early 2000s, had a reputation for finding diamonds in the rough, for seeing potential where others saw risk. She was 73 years old, known for her sharp business sense and her advocacy for women in technology. Why would someone like that send me $200,000? I heard the bathroom door open and Jennifer's voice. "Krista? Are you all right?" I came out of the stall. Jennifer was leaning against the sink counter, her expression sympathetic. "I'm guessing this is overwhelming," she said. "That's one word for it," I managed. "I don't understand. I don't know Dr. Finch. I've never even met her." "Yes, you have," Jennifer said gently. 7 years ago. You don't remember because you were in a very dark place at the time. And then, like a curtain lifting, I did remember. I was 22, fresh out of college, living in Portland, Oregon. I'd moved there because it was as far from New York as I could get without actually leaving the country. I was working 3 jobs just to afford a tiny studio apartment in a sketchy neighborhood. Mornings, I worked at a coffee shop. Afternoons, I shelved books at an independent bookstore. Evenings and weekends, I did freelance graphic design for anyone who'd hire me. I was also deeply, profoundly depressed. The kind of depression that makes getting out of bed feel like climbing a mountain. I'd started having panic attacks. I couldn't sleep. I felt like a fraud at everything I did, waiting for someone to figure out that I was just the stupid girl my parents always said I was. One night, I'd attended a free community workshop on career development. It was held in a public library basement, folding chairs in a circle, stale coffee in styrofoam cups. There had been maybe 15 people there, and one of them had been an older woman with silver hair and sharp, intelligent eyes who'd asked me, afterward, what I did for work. I'd told her about my 3 jobs, my graphic design work. She'd asked to see my portfolio. I'd shown her on my phone, expecting nothing. She'd looked through every single piece, taking her time, asking questions. Then she'd handed me her business card and said, "You have talent. If you ever want to do something bigger than album covers for local bands, call me." I'd kept that card, but I'd never called. I'd been too scared, too convinced that someone like her couldn't possibly see anything valuable in someone like me. "You gave a workshop," I said slowly, the memory becoming clearer, "about finding your purpose. You talked about taking risks." "That was Dr. Finch's assistant at the time," Jennifer said. "But Dr. Finch was there." She sat in the back. "She does that sometimes. Goes to community events incognito, looking for people with potential. She saw something in you." I shook my head. That was 7 years ago. I never called her. I never followed up. Why would she care about me now? "Because you did follow up," Jennifer said. "Just not with her. You did something else. Something extraordinary." She pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot. It was an app interface I knew intimately, because I'd designed every pixel of it. Mindflow, my app. "How?" I started, then stopped. "How do you know about that?" "Dr. Finch has been watching your career for 7 years, Jennifer said simply. "When you launched Mindflow 4 years ago, she noticed immediately. She's been tracking its growth ever since. And Krista, she's incredibly impressed." I'd created Mindflow when I was 24, 2 years after that workshop in the library basement. I'd finally gotten tested for ADHD after years of suffering. The diagnosis had been simultaneously devastating and liberating. Devastating because it confirmed something was different about my brain. Liberating because it meant I wasn't lazy or stupid. I was neurodivergent. My brain just worked differently. The medication helped, but what helped more was understanding myself. I started researching ADHD, learning coping strategies, finding communities online of other people like me. And I kept noticing the same problem. All the organizational tools, the productivity apps, the calendar systems, they were designed for neurotypical brains. They didn't work for people like me. So I'd taught myself to code. I'd used free online resources, YouTube tutorials, library books. I'd discovered that coding was perfect for my ADHD brain. I could hyper-focus for hours, lost in the logic and creativity of building something from nothing. It was like my brain had finally found its native language. I'd built Mindflow as a tool for myself, a task management and organizational app specifically designed for ADHD brains. It used gamification, body doubling features, visual cues, and gentle reminders instead of harsh notifications. It celebrated small wins. It was forgiving when you forgot to use it for 3 weeks. It understood that productivity looked different for different brains. I'd launched it for free, expecting maybe my friends and some people from online ADHD forums to use it. Within a month, I had 50,000 downloads. Within 6 months, 500,000. The testimonials flooded in. Parents of ADHD kids, adults newly diagnosed, college students who'd struggled for years. They all said the same thing. "This app changed my life." I'd started charging a small subscription fee to cover server costs. Then I'd hired a developer to help me expand features, then another, then a small team. I'd incorporated as a business, using a company name instead of my real name to stay anonymous. I'd lived modestly, pouring most of the profit back into development. By the time I was 27, Mindflow had 3 million users. The company was valued at $80 million. I owned 60% of it. And I'd never told my family any of it. Dr. Finch invested in you, Jennifer said, watching my face. 2 years ago, when you were looking for Series A funding, you dealt with her junior partners, but the decision to invest came from her directly. She put in $5 million. I remembered that investment. It had saved the company, allowed us to scale properly, hire the right people, but I'd never met with Dr. Finch herself. Everything had been handled through her firm's representatives. She wanted to give you space to grow, Jennifer continued. She didn't want to interfere or make you feel pressured, but she's been following your journey, and now she thinks it's time. Time for what? I asked. Jennifer handed me the full letter from the envelope. I read it standing there in the bathroom, and by the end, tears were streaming down my face. Dr. Finch was dying. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She had maybe 3 months left, and in her final act, she wanted to help me with something she called my unfinished business. My parents were about to make a catastrophic mistake, the letter explained. Richard's company, Secure Tech Solutions, was failing. Dylan wasn't ready to run it, but I could save it if I was willing to step out of the shadows and show my family who I'd become. Dr. Finch had arranged everything. Her firm owned 15% of my father's company through a complex series of investments he'd never paid attention to. They had the power to call an emergency shareholders meeting, and they were calling it in 3 days. The letter ended. I'm dying, Krista. Before I go, I need you to stop hiding. You've built something beautiful. You've proven every cruel word they ever said was a lie. Now it's time to let them see what they lost when they chose to be blind. I've given you the tools. The rest is up to you. With love and admiration, Eleanor. I looked up at Jennifer, wiping my eyes. She wants me to confront them. At a shareholders meeting. She wants you to save your father's company, Jennifer corrected gently. And yes, that will require confronting them. Are you ready? Before I could answer, the bathroom door slammed open. My mother stood there, her face twisted with fury. She'd clearly been looking for me. Her eyes landed on the letter in my hands, and she lunged forward, snatching it from my grip. What is this? She hissed, scanning the pages. What are you trying to pull? She read quickly, her face going from red to pale to purple. When she got to the part about the shareholders meeting, about Dr. Finch's investment in my father's company, she made a sound like a wounded animal. Then she did something I'll never forget. She tore the letter into pieces, right there in front of me, and threw them at my feet like confetti. You little liar, she spat. You're trying to scam us on your brother's special day. What kind of sick person invents a story like this? I looked at the shredded paper on the floor. Then I looked at my mother. And for the first time in my entire life, I didn't feel small. I didn't apologize. I didn't shrink. I felt calm. You just destroyed a letter from Eleanor Finch, I said quietly. The Eleanor Finch. I wonder what Dad will think about that. And I walked out of the bathroom, leaving her standing there, with Jennifer following behind me, a small smile on her professional face. My father was in the middle of another toast when I walked back into the dining room. He had his arm around Dylan, his face flushed with champagne and pride, telling some story about Dylan's thesis advisor at Harvard. The whole room was listening, laughing at the right moments, applauding. I walked straight up to the table and stood there until my father noticed me. He stopped mid-sentence, confused. Krista, we were just talking about Dylan's future plans. Did you want to say something? Actually, yes, I said. My voice was steady. My hands had stopped shaking. I pulled out my phone and held it up so he could see the screen. I wanted to ask you about this. He squinted at my phone, then his expression changed. He'd seen the bank transfer. $200,000 from Finch Capital Ventures. What is that? He said slowly. It's a payment, I said. From Eleanor Finch. Do you know who that is, Dad? His face went completely white. Of course I know who Eleanor Finch is. She's one of the most powerful venture capitalists in the country. But that doesn't explain why. My mother came rushing over from the bathroom, her face streaked with mascara. Richard, she's lying. She's trying to pull some kind of con. I found her in the bathroom with some woman. They had this fake letter. What letter? my father demanded. My mother faltered. She'd torn it up. She had no proof of what it said. Jennifer stepped forward smoothly, professional and calm. She introduced herself as Dr. Finch's executive assistant and handed my father a thick manila folder. "This is a notice of an emergency shareholders meeting for SecureTech Solutions," she said pleasantly. "As you'll see, Finch Capital Ventures holds 15% of your company's shares through various investment vehicles. The meeting is scheduled for 3 days from now to discuss leadership structure and future direction." My father opened the folder. I watched the color drain from his face as he read. Around us, the party had gone completely silent. Everyone was staring. "This is impossible," my father said. "I would know if Eleanor Finch had invested in my company." "You approved all the investments," Jennifer said politely. "Perhaps you didn't connect the dots. FCV Holdings, Finch Technology Trust, Pacific Northwest Capital Partners, all subsidiaries of Finch Capital Ventures. It's all detailed in the documentation." Dylan had moved closer, reading over our father's shoulder. His face had changed too. He looked confused, worried, and something else. Curious, maybe. "Why?" Dylan said quietly. "Does this document mention a leadership evaluation and potential restructuring?" My father's hand was shaking. He looked at me like he'd never seen me before. "What does this have to do with you?" I opened my mouth to answer, but my phone rang. The sound cut through the tense silence like a knife. I looked at the screen. Unknown number. Something made me answer it. I put it on speaker. A woman's voice came through, cultured and warm despite its obvious weakness. "Krista, darling, I see your mother made a scene. How predictable." "Who is this?" my mother demanded. "Patricia," the voice said, and there was steel underneath the warmth now. "Still interrupting people, I see. Some things never change. This is Eleanor Finch. I'm calling from my hospital bed because I wanted to hear this moment myself." My father grabbed the phone from my hand. "Dr. Finch, this is Richard Sterling. I don't know what my daughter has told you, but—" "Silence," Eleanor Finch said, and somehow that one word made my father stop talking. "I've known you for 20 years, Richard. Do you remember? You came to me in 2003, asked for investment advice. I gave it to you. You ignored it because you don't trust women to understand technology. Then you watched your competitors implement exactly what I'd suggested and become millionaires." My father's jaw worked, but no sound came out. "I invested in your company anyway," Dr. Finch continued, "because I believe in second chances. I've been waiting for 20 years for you to prove you could grow beyond your arrogance. Instead, you've spent 2 decades building a company that's now 18 months from bankruptcy and grooming a son who doesn't even want the job to take over." Dylan made a small sound, like he'd been punched. "In 3 days," Dr. Finch said, her voice getting quieter, weaker, "you're going to learn what your daughter built while you were busy worshiping mediocrity. And Richard, your company is failing. Dylan's Harvard degree won't save it. But Krista might. If you're smart enough to let her." The line went dead. The silence in the restaurant was absolute. 50 people, all frozen, all staring at our family like we were actors in a play. My father looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. "Fear. What did you build?" he whispered. I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. "Come to the meeting," I said. "You'll find out." And I walked out of that restaurant with my head high, Jennifer beside me, leaving my entire family standing in the wreckage of their perfect celebration. I flew back to Portland that night. I couldn't stay in New York, couldn't breathe the same air as my parents for one more second. Jennifer gave me a file before I left, thick with documents and spreadsheets, and told me to read everything before we met again. I read it on the plane. By the time we landed, I understood exactly how bad things were. SecureTech Solutions was dying. The company my father had built, the source of all his pride and our family's wealth, was collapsing from the inside. They'd failed to innovate for years. While competitors developed sleek, user-friendly security software, my father's company had stuck with the same clunky interfaces they'd been using since 2005. Their biggest clients had been leaving steadily for 3 years. Revenue was down 47%. They were burning through cash reserves. My father had hidden all of this from the board. He'd done some creative accounting, nothing illegal but definitely misleading, to make the quarterly reports look better than reality. He'd convinced himself that bringing Dylan in as CEO would fix everything. Fresh Harvard blood, new ideas, millennial perspective. Except Dylan didn't have new ideas for the company. According to the notes Jennifer had included, Dylan had never shown any interest in cybersecurity or software development. His degree was in philosophy and literature. He'd been planning to pursue teaching. My father had simply decided Dylan's future, without asking him. I spent 2 days in my Portland apartment, which was modest and comfortable and nothing like the mansion I'd grown up in. I'd bought it with my first big profit from MindFlow, a 2-bedroom condo with a view of Mount Hood. My furniture was from IKEA. My art was from local artists I'd met at farmers markets. I had plants everywhere, thriving under my inconsistent care because I'd chosen varieties that tolerated neglect. This was my real life, the life I'd built in secret. On the second day, my phone rang. Dylan. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. Krista, he said. His voice was shaky. Can we meet? Just the two of us? I'm in Portland. You flew to Portland, I said flatly. I needed to get away from them. From the screaming, can I see you? Please? We met at a coffee shop in Brooklyn, the Portland neighborhood, not the New York one, at a place I loved that made their own pastries and knew my order by heart. Dylan arrived looking like he hadn't slept. His Harvard sweatshirt was wrinkled. His eyes were red. We sat outside on the patio. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. Finally, Dylan said, Tell me everything. What did you build? And why didn't you tell us? So I told him about moving to Portland alone and broken, about the ADHD diagnosis that finally made sense of my entire childhood, about learning to code in my tiny apartment, surviving on ramen and coffee, about building MindFlow because I needed it to survive, then watching it grow into something that helped millions of people, about the company valuation, the $80 million, the 3 million users. Dylan's eyes got wider and wider. When I finished, he put his head in his hands and started crying. I'm so sorry, he said. Krista, I'm so sorry. I knew they treated you differently. I knew they were cruel. But I was a kid, and then I was a teenager, and I just accepted it. I thought I was better. I believed them when they said you were lazy. He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. I don't want to run Dad's company. I never did. I want to be a teacher. I want to work with kids who struggle in school and help them see they're not stupid. Kids like you. I felt something crack open in my chest. You're not responsible for their choices, I said quietly. But I benefited from them, Dylan said. Every scholarship, every opportunity, every moment they praised me, it was at your expense. I see that now. I showed him MindFlow on my phone. The interface, the features, the user testimonials. There were hundreds of thousands of them now. People whose lives had changed because they finally had a tool that understood how their brains worked. One testimonial was from a mother whose 12-year-old daughter had been failing school until she started using MindFlow. Now she's getting A's, the mother had written. And more importantly, she believes in herself again. She knows she's not broken, just different. Dylan read it and cried harder. This is incredible, he whispered. You built this. You actually changed people's lives. The moment felt fragile and precious. Like maybe, for the first time, my brother and I were actually seeing each other as real people instead of the roles our parents had assigned us. Then our mother's voice shattered it. How touching, Patricia said. She'd appeared on the patio like a vengeful ghost, her face twisted with rage. Poisoning your brother against his own family. Is that your plan, Krista? Dylan stood up, putting himself between us. Mom, stop! Just stop! Krista didn't poison me. She told me the truth. The truth? Patricia laughed, high and sharp. The truth is she's a con artist. That app is probably stolen. The company valuation is probably fabricated. And you're falling for it because you always were too soft. She turned to me. I've been investigating you. Did you know that? I have a private investigator. He found your therapy records. Years of therapy, Krista. Medication for your so-called ADHD. You're mentally unstable. And you think we should trust our family legacy to someone with a mental disorder? The coffee shop had gone silent. Everyone was staring. I stood up slowly. My hands were steady. My voice was calm. Yes, I said clearly. I have ADHD. I take medication for it. I've been in therapy since I was 22 because you and Dad gave me such severe anxiety and depression that I had panic attacks every single day. And despite all of that, despite growing up with parents who told me I was worthless, I built a company that's helped 3 million people. What have you built, Mom, besides a reputation for cruelty? Patricia's hand flew up. She slapped me across the face so hard my ears rang. The entire patio gasped. But it was Dylan who moved. Dylan who stepped forward and, in a voice I'd never heard from him before, cold and final, said, "Don't ever touch her again." Patricia turned on him. "How dare you?" "No," Dylan said. "How dare you? I've watched you abuse her our whole lives. I've stayed quiet because I was scared of you. But I'm done. I'm choosing her. And Mom, you can leave now before I call the police and have you arrested for assault." Patricia looked between us, her face contorted with fury and something that might have been fear. Then she turned and stormed off the patio. Dylan turned to me, his hand shaking as he reached for my shoulder. "Are you okay?" Before I could answer, a woman from the table next to us stood up. She was in her 30s, stylish, with a press badge clipped to her bag. "Excuse me," she said. "I'm Sarah Chen from TechCrunch. I was here by coincidence, but I recognize you from the leaked photos of Mindflow's founder last month. And I just recorded your mother assaulting you and admitting she hired a private investigator to dig into your medical records." She held up her phone. "Miss Patricia Sterling," she continued, turning to where my mother had frozen at the patio exit, "how does it feel knowing your daughter built an $80 million company while you called her worthless? Can I quote you from my article about family dynamics in tech?" My mother ran. Actually ran, her expensive heels clicking frantically on the sidewalk. Sarah turned back to me. "I'd love to interview you properly. The real story behind Mindflow's founder. Would you be interested?" Dylan was still standing there, looking shell-shocked. Then he did something he hadn't done since we were children. He hugged me. Really hugged me. Tight and desperate. "I'm on your side," he whispered. "Whatever happens at that meeting, I'm with you." And for the first time in 28 years, I believed that maybe, just maybe, I had family after all. The emergency shareholders meeting was held in a glass-walled conference room on the 40th floor of a Manhattan skyscraper. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Central Park. The trees below turned orange and gold with early autumn. It would have been beautiful if I wasn't so terrified. I arrived 30 minutes early, dressed in a charcoal suit I'd bought specifically for this. Jennifer met me in the lobby, gave me a folder with my presentation materials, and squeezed my hand. "You've got this," she said. "Dr. Finch believes in you. I believe in you. Now you just have to believe in yourself." My parents were already in the conference room when I walked in. My father sat at the head of the table, my mother beside him, both of them flanked by 2 lawyers in expensive suits. They looked at me with identical expressions of cold fury. Dylan arrived separately, deliberately sitting on the opposite side of the table from our parents. Our mother's face twitched, but she said nothing. The other shareholders filed in. 3 representatives from venture capital firms, 2 private investors. All of them looked uncomfortable, confused about why they'd been summoned. Then the large screen at the end of the room flickered to life, and Dr. Eleanor Finch appeared on video call. She was in a hospital bed. That much was obvious. Pale, thin, with tubes running to her arms, but her eyes were sharp and alive, and when she smiled at me, I felt strength flood through my body. "Good morning," she said. Her voice was weak but clear. "Thank you all for coming. I know this is unusual. I apologize for the drama, but I'm dying, so I'm allowed a little drama at the end." A few people shifted uncomfortably. "We're here to discuss the future of secure tech solutions," Dr. Finch continued. Richard, would you like to present your succession plan? My father stood, his jaw tight. He pulled up a slideshow presentation. It showed Dylan's credentials, his Harvard degree, his academic achievements. It talked about bringing fresh perspective and millennial insight to the company. It was professional and polished and completely empty of substance. When he finished, one of the venture capital representatives raised her hand. This is all very impressive, Mr. Sterling, but can you address the rumors about the company's financial health? We've heard concerning reports. My father's face darkened. Those reports are exaggerated. We're in a transitional period, certainly, but with new leadership. Richard, Dr. Finch interrupted gently. Don't lie to these people. They'll find out eventually. She nodded at Jennifer, who was in the room with us. Jennifer pulled up a different presentation on the screen beside Dr. Finch's video feed. Financial statements. The real ones. The room went silent as people absorbed the numbers. Revenue decline, client loss, cash burn rate, 18 months to bankruptcy without significant intervention. One of the private investors stood up, furious. You've been hiding this? We have a right to accurate financial information. My father opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. The projections showed. The projections showed what you wanted to see, Dr. Finch said, not reality. Now, would you like to tell everyone your plan to fix this, or should I? My father sank into his chair. He had no plan. That much was obvious. Dylan stood up. His voice was quiet but steady. I have something to say. Everyone turned to look at him. My father wants me to take over this company, Dylan said. He's spent my entire life grooming me for it. But I need to tell you all something. I cheated to get into Harvard. The room erupted. My mother made a strangled sound. I paid someone to take my SAT, Dylan continued. I plagiarized parts of my application essays. I've been living a lie because I was terrified of disappointing my parents. And the truth is, I don't know anything about running a tech company. I don't want to learn. I want to be a teacher. I want to work with kids who struggle in school. He turned to look at me. My sister is the brilliant one. She always was. She built something real while I was pretending to be someone I'm not. I don't vote to give me control of this company. I vote to give it to Krista. My mother screamed. Actually screamed, a sound of pure rage. My father lunged out of his chair toward Dylan. 2 security guards I hadn't noticed before stepped forward and restrained him. This is insane, my father shouted. You're going to give my company to her? She couldn't even graduate high school with decent grades. Dr. Finch's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Enough. Everyone froze. Dr. Finch looked directly into the camera. Krista, dear, it's your turn. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my presentation remote. But I stood up. I walked to the front of the room, and I began. I told them about MindFlow, about the 3 million users, about the $80 million valuation. I showed them testimonials from people whose lives had changed. I presented market research showing that 12 million Americans have ADHD, and millions more have dyslexia, autism, and other forms of neurodivergence, an entirely underserved market. Then I showed them my proposal, a merger, MindFlow's user interface technology and understanding of neurodivergent users, combined with SecureTech's cybersecurity infrastructure. We would create the first major cybersecurity platform designed specifically for people with ADHD, dyslexia, autism, and other cognitive differences. The market research shows this demographic is massively underserved in the tech security space, I said. They need better tools. They'll pay premium prices for products that actually work with their brains instead of against them. Conservative projections show we could hit $200 million in revenue within 3 years. I looked at my father. You built something valuable, Dad. But you stopped innovating. You stopped listening to your customers. You stopped growing. I can fix that, if you'll let me. My father was purple with rage. He stood up, shaking off the security guard's hand. You expect me to hand my life's work to you? To someone who couldn't even pass high school calculus? I got a B- in calculus, Dad, I said calmly. And in my company, I hire people who are better at math than me. That's called good leadership. Knowing your weaknesses and building a team to compensate. My mother stood up, her voice dripping venom. You're all falling for this? She's mentally ill. She's on medication. She's been in therapy for years. This is a scam. She probably stole that app. She's not capable of building anything. The words hung in the air like poison. And then my phone rang. I looked at the screen. Unknown number. Something made me answer it, put it on speaker. A voice I didn't recognize spoke, professional and crisp. Is this Krista Sterling, founder and CEO of MindFlow? Yes, I said. This is James Park from Google's acquisition team. We've been trying to reach you for weeks. I'm calling to make a formal offer. Google would like to acquire MindFlow for $300 million. We need an answer within 24 hours. The line went dead. The conference room was so silent I could hear my own heartbeat. $300 million. My father's face had gone from purple to gray. My mother looked like she might faint. The venture capital representatives were all sitting forward in their seats, suddenly very interested. Dr. Finch was smiling on the screen, proud and knowing. I looked at my parents, then at the shareholders, then at Dylan, who was grinning through his tears, and I realized I had a choice to make. I asked for a 15-minute recess. The shareholders agreed, everyone filing out into the hallway in stunned silence. I went to an empty office down the hall, and Jennifer followed. My phone rang immediately. Dr. Finch, calling from her hospital bed. $300 million, she said without preamble. You could take that money and never look back. Walk away from your family, from this mess, from all of it. You'd be set for life. I know, I said quietly. But that's not what you want, is it? I looked out the window at the Manhattan skyline, all those buildings full of people chasing their dreams. I thought about 7-year-old me, sitting at the dinner table, pushing food around my plate while my parents compared me to Dylan. I thought about all the users who'd written to me, telling me MindFlow had changed their lives. I thought about the 14-year-old girl who'd sent me an email last week saying she used to think she was stupid until she found my app, and now she was getting straight A's. No, I said. It's not what I want. Dr. Finch laughed, then coughed. That's my girl. What do you want? I want to build something that actually helps people, I said. I want to prove that different brains aren't broken brains. I want to save my father's company because it still has value, and because putting thousands of people out of work just to spite my parents would make me as cruel as they are. I paused, thinking. And I want to do it on my terms. Then do it, Dr. Finch said. You have my support. You have my shares. You have everything you need except your own courage. And Krista, I think you're far braver than you know. The call ended. I walked back into that conference room with my head high and my hands steady. Everyone was already seated, waiting. My father looked like he'd aged 10 years and 15 minutes. My mother was staring at her hands. I stood at the front of the room and addressed the shareholders. I'm declining Google's offer, I said. My father's head snapped up. What? I'm proposing instead a 3-way merger, I continued. MindFlow, Secure Tech Solutions, and Finch Capital Ventures combine to create a new entity. I'll serve as CEO. We'll build accessible, user-friendly cybersecurity products for neurodivergent users and beyond. I pulled up my detailed presentation. 5-year projections, market analysis, hiring plans, revenue models. I'd been working on it for 2 days straight, barely sleeping, and it showed every ounce of strategic thinking I'd developed building MindFlow from nothing. I showed testimonials from MindFlow users. One video was from a mother whose daughter had struggled in school for years. Before MindFlow, my daughter thought she was stupid, the woman said. Tears in her eyes. Now she's thriving. She knows she's not broken, just different. And that's powerful. I showed letters from teachers, therapists, parents, and users themselves. People whose lives had genuinely changed because someone finally built a tool that worked with their brains instead of against them. This is what we can do in the cybersecurity space, I said. We can make technology accessible to everyone, not just neurotypical users. It's not just good ethics, it's good business. This market is massive and completely underserved. Then I turned to my father. Dad, you built something valuable. but you're holding on to it so tightly you're crushing it. I'm offering you a chance to be part of something bigger. 20% ownership. Position as founder and strategic advisor. You'll still be wealthy. You'll still matter, but you have to let go of control. My father stared at me. For a long moment, nobody breathed. Then he stood up and walked out of the room without a word. My mother scrambled to follow him. The shareholders looked at each other. The lead venture capital representative spoke first. I vote yes. This is brilliant. Accessible tech is the future, and this company is positioned perfectly to lead it. One by one, the others voted. Yes, yes, yes. Even the private investor who'd abstained earlier changed his vote to yes. We had the 75% majority needed for major restructuring. The company was mine. Dylan stood up and hugged me in front of everyone. I'm so proud of you, he whispered. Papers were signed. Contracts executed. The new entity was formed. Accessible Security Technologies. I was named CEO with a 5-year contract. Dylan asked if he could work part-time while getting his teaching certification, and I made him head of educational outreach. His job would be helping schools implement our technology and consulting on accessibility features. As everyone filed out, congratulating me, shaking my hand, I felt something I'd never felt before. Not happiness, exactly, not triumph, something quieter and deeper. Peace. I felt at peace. Jennifer approached me, her eyes wet. Dr. Finch wants to talk to you, privately. We set up the video call in the empty conference room. Dr. Finch was barely conscious, her eyes heavy with medication. But she smiled when she saw me. You did it, she whispered. My brilliant girl. I'm so proud. You gave me the chance, I said. You saw something in me when no one else did. No, darling, Dr. Finch said. You saved yourself. I just held up a mirror so you could see what was always there. Her eyes started to close. Rest now, I said gently. You've earned it. Build something beautiful, she murmured. Make the world kinder to people who think differently. That's my last wish. The screen went dark. 3 hours later, Jennifer called to tell me Dr. Finch had passed away peacefully in her sleep. I sat in that empty conference room and cried for the woman who'd been more of a mother to me than my own, who'd seen my potential when I couldn't see it myself, who'd used her last months of life to give me the tools I needed to step into my power. 1 week later, I received notification of Dr. Finch's will. She'd left me her entire 15% stake in the newly merged company, and a handwritten letter. Krista, it read, build something that makes the world kinder to people who think differently. That's my last wish. And sweetheart, forgive your parents eventually. Not for them, for you. Carrying hate is too heavy, and you have better things to do with your strength. You're going to change so many lives. I'm honored I got to see the beginning. With all my love, Eleanor. I kept that letter in my desk drawer. On the hardest days, I'd take it out and read it, and remember that someone had believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. 6 months later, I stood in front of a room full of journalists, tech industry leaders, and disability advocates for the launch of Accessible Security Technologies' first product. The product was a cybersecurity platform with fully customizable interfaces. Users could adjust everything from color schemes to notification styles to the way information was presented. It had built-in features for screen readers, dyslexia-friendly fonts, ADHD-friendly task management, and autism-friendly sensory options. We'd partnered with neurodivergent consultants throughout the design process. 30% of our 200 employees were openly neurodivergent. We'd created internship programs specifically for people with ADHD, autism, and dyslexia. Within 3 months of launch, the company was valued at $400 million. Forbes called me one of the most innovative tech leaders under 35. Fast Company wrote a feature about building inclusive technology. TechCrunch did a follow-up article on my family drama, but this time focusing on how I'd turned childhood trauma into a mission to help others. Dylan was thriving. He'd enrolled in a graduate program for special education and worked part-time as our head of educational outreach. He'd gotten engaged to a special education teacher he'd met through work. At family dinners, which were now just the two of us, he'd talk excitedly about helping kids with learning differences discover their strengths. I'd moved back to New York, buying a modest brownstone in Brooklyn. Nothing like the mansion I'd grown up in, but it was mine. Every room reflected who I actually was, not who my parents had wanted me to be. I'd started therapy specifically for childhood trauma, joined a support group for adult children of narcissistic parents, created a scholarship fund, and Dr. Finch's name for neurodivergent students pursuing STEM careers. My parents had divorced 3 months after the shareholders' meeting. My mother had moved to Florida and cut off all contact with both Dylan and me. We were fine with that. My father had hit rock bottom, lost most of his wealth in the divorce, struggled with depression, started drinking. Then one night, he'd shown up at my office, drunk, desperate, begging for money. I didn't give him money. I offered him something else. "I'll pay for your therapy," I said. 1 year. Any therapist you choose. And if you complete 1 year of consistent work, we can have supervised dinners once a month. "But Dad, I can't fix you. You have to do that yourself." He'd been too proud to accept at first. But 3 months later, broke and desperate, he'd called me and asked for the name of a therapist. The work was slow, painful. At our first supervised dinner, 6 months into his therapy, his apology had been stiff and rehearsed. But it was a start. "I don't need you to be perfect," I'd told him. "I need you to be consistent, to keep trying, that's all." Now, standing in front of this room full of people celebrating our success, I thought about how far I'd come. From the girl who believed she was stupid to the CEO of a company changing lives. After the presentation, during the cocktail reception, I checked my email. There was one from a 14-year-old girl named Emma. "Miss Sterling," she wrote, "my parents say I'm lazy because I have ADHD. But your app helps me prove I'm not. Also, I read about you online. You give me hope. Can different brains really be successful?" I wrote back immediately. "Emma, different brains don't just succeed. We innovate. We see solutions others miss. We build things the world didn't know it needed. Your ADHD isn't a bug in your programming. It's a feature. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. You're not broken. You're extraordinary. And yes, you can be wildly successful. But more importantly, you can be genuinely happy. That's the real prize. Keep going. I believe in you, Krista." That night, I recorded a video message for the company website, a message for everyone who'd ever been told they weren't enough. I looked directly into the camera and spoke from my heart. I spent 25 years believing I was less than, that I was the family failure, the dumb one, the disappointment. But here's what I learned. The people who make you feel small are usually terrified of how big you could become. Your worth isn't determined by people who refuse to see you. Sometimes the greatest success isn't proving them wrong. It's building a life so authentic, so aligned with your true self, that their opinions become irrelevant. I paused, thinking about my journey. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means releasing the weight so you can fly. I'm working on forgiving my parents, but I didn't give them power over me again. I built boundaries made of self-respect. And on the other side of that pain, I found purpose. I found community. I found myself. I looked into the camera, speaking to every person who'd ever felt like they didn't belong. To everyone who's been called stupid, lazy, broken, or less than, you're not. You're just different. And the world desperately needs different. The innovations that change everything come from people who see the world in ways others can't. Your neurodivergence, your learning difference, your unique brain, it's not a disability. It's a different ability. Build something with your difference. Create something that helps people like you. That's how you win. Not by becoming what they wanted. By becoming fully, unapologetically yourself. I smiled, feeling the truth of my own words. Success isn't about proving wrong the people who doubted you. It's about building a life so genuine, so aligned with your values and strengths, that external validation becomes unnecessary. True victory is self-acceptance. It's purpose. It's using your pain to help others heal. I thought about Dr. Finch, about her final letter, about everything she'd taught me. The greatest revenge isn't destroying the people who hurt you. It's becoming genuinely happy. It's building something beautiful. It's transforming your trauma into your mission. The video ended. I posted it to our website and to my personal social media accounts. Within 24 hours, it had been viewed 2 million times. My inbox flooded with messages from people sharing their own stories. Parents of neurodivergent kids. Adults who'd struggled their whole lives. Teachers who wanted to do better. One message stood out. It was from a woman named Sarah, a single mother raising an ADHD daughter. "I've been where your parents were," she wrote. "I used to get so frustrated with my daughter. Why couldn't she just focus? Why couldn't she be like the other kids? Then I watched your video. I realized I was doing to her what your parents did to you. I'm in therapy now, learning to celebrate her differences instead of trying to fix them. Thank you for sharing your story. You probably saved my relationship with my daughter." I cried reading that message. Because that was the point. Not revenge, not proving my worth to people who'd never see it, but breaking the cycle, helping other kids avoid the pain I'd endured. 3 weeks later, I attended our company's 1-year anniversary celebration. Employees, users, disability advocates, investors, everyone who'd been part of this journey. My father was there, sober, quiet, sitting in the back. He'd completed 8 months of therapy. Our monthly dinners were still awkward, still painful sometimes, but he was trying, really trying. After the speeches and toasts, he approached me nervously. "I wrote you something," he said. "In therapy. My therapist thought I should give it to you." He handed me a sealed envelope. I opened it later, alone in my office. The letter was 3 pages long, handwritten, tear-stained in places. He took full accountability. No excuses, no justifications, just raw, honest admission of how badly he'd failed me, how he'd projected his own insecurities onto me, how he'd seen his struggles in me and hated me for reminding him of his own weaknesses, how he'd been so terrified of not being perfect that he'd demanded perfection from his children, destroying us both in different ways. The letter ended. "I called you stupid because I was terrified. You reminded me of myself before I learned to hide my own struggles. I saw my weakness in you and I hated it. I made you carry my shame. You deserved a father who celebrated your uniqueness, who helped you understand your brilliant, different brain. I'm trying to become someone who can do that now, even though it's too late to give you the childhood you deserved. I'm sorry. I'll spend the rest of my life being sorry and trying to be better. I love you." I should have said that more. I'm saying it now. "Dad." I folded the letter carefully and put it in my desk drawer, next to Dr. Finch's final letter to me. Both letters represented the same truth from different angles, that people can change, that it's never too late to choose growth over ego, that the hardest work is forgiving yourself and others. That evening, I stood on my Brooklyn brownstone's roof, looking at the city lights. I thought about 7-year-old me, crying in her room after another brutal family dinner. I wished I could go back and tell that little girl what I know now. "You're not broken," I'd whisper. "Your brain is different, and different is going to change the world. The people who hurt you are afraid. Afraid of their own inadequacy, their own struggles, their own humanity. But you're going to take that pain and transform it into purpose. You're going to help millions of people. You're going to prove that different brains aren't less than. They're essential. Keep going, little one. It gets better. You get stronger. And one day, you'll look back on this pain and realize it was shaping you into exactly who you needed to become." My phone buzzed. An email from another young person using our software, asking for advice. I smiled and started typing my response, ready to help another person see their worth, their potential, their beautiful, different brain. This was my purpose. This was my victory. Not the money or the company valuation or the media attention, but this, helping others find the self-acceptance that had taken me 28 years to discover. And as I looked out at the city that had watched me fall and rise, I felt something I'd never felt before. Gratitude for the pain that had shaped me, for the struggle that had strengthened me, for the journey that had brought me home to myself. I wasn't the dumb one. I never had been. I was just different. And different, I'd learned, was exactly what the world needed. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been told you weren't good enough, only to prove them wrong by staying true to yourself? Have you struggled with feeling different, and then discovered that your difference was actually your greatest strength? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people who need this message find it. And if you want more stories about turning pain into purpose, about finding strength in struggle, subscribe to this channel and click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Please share this video with someone who needs to hear that being different isn't being less than. Share it with the neurodivergent person in your life who's still learning to see their worth. Share it with the parent who's trying to understand their unique child. Share it with anyone who's ever felt like they don't belong. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of this community. And remember, your differences aren't flaws to fix. They're features to celebrate. Build something beautiful with your unique perspective. The world is waiting for exactly what only you can create. Until next time, keep being authentically, courageously, beautifully yourself.